Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tsuriou's Master Class. Tonight I'll be teaching about effective squid fishing. So effective squid fishing is a very subjective topic. Some people will call effective in terms of catching a big squid. To them it is called effective, or to others they will be catching a lot of squid in volume. They'll be effective for them. As for us in Tsuriou, what is effective squid fishing? Effective squid fishing is the understanding of different aspects of squid fishing, so that you can effectively, consistently catching squid in volume as well and in numbers. So for us, it's consistency and understanding the different aspects of squid fishing to combine all the skill together so that you can fish effectively and consistently. So it actually covers different aspects. To be effective, you need to cover different aspects of squid fishing, from the rod itself, the reel itself, from the jigs, from the weather conditions, and the water conditions, everything combination of that. So you have to have the understanding on how to utilize all this knowledge together to put into practice to make it very effective. All right, so today I'll be delving into different topics of all the different aspects of the effective squid fishing, so that I can help you out to increase your catch rate, and in return that you'll be consistently catching as well, from big to small squid. So firstly, we have to understand the squid anatomy and the behavior of squid. So squid, they are colorblind, so they do not see colors, they see in black and white. So it's crucial for us to understand that, so that we can use the jigs to create the effect to best target their vision. So what they see is black and white, so they do not see colors. So a color jig to us, is what green jig is green jig to us, but to squid it will be different. They'll see it as a silhouette. We try to turn a green jig into silhouette. So I'll teach you that and how to doing that. So understanding the squid anatomy is important, so that you create the jig, uses the jig, effective jig, to attract them, so that if they don't see it, they can't attack it. So it's crucial for us to understand their behavior as well. So how do squid attack? They are ambush predator. So they hide under the sea bait, waiting to ambush their prey. So it's important to understand that we need to get our jig to attract them right to the bottom of the sea bait, so that they can see it to attract it. So if they don't see it, they don't attack it. So we need to understand their behavior. So they like to hide under the sea bait. That's where we have to target them. So to us, we call that a target zone, just where the sea bait is. So you need to get the jig down and close to the sea bait, so that you can attract them. So, and how do they attack? When they see their prey swimming past, the first thing they do, that's their most natural behavior, is to charge towards them, grab the front of the head of the fish and the bait, the prey, and they shove it down their beak to chew them up. So why do they catch them in the head? It's because so that they immobilize the bait fish, so that it doesn't swim away, and it will suffocate them as well, so in the process. And it's so fast that they can grab it and just chew it straight away. And that's their most natural instinct, to attack with their two tentacles, the long tentacle. And the other way they attack is when they see the prey is much bigger than them. At times they'll come from the side. They'll grab them from the side instead from the front of the head. So with this method, when they grab from the side, a lot of time they come and touch it and they go, and we miss the opportunity to hook them, because they do not get hooked at the back of the jig. So when they come from the side, a lot of times you can feel the squid touching, but you do not hook the jig and the squid, and they're gone. It's because that they come from the side. So if they come from the back, naturally they'll hook from the back. Imagine this is the squid jig. So if this is a squid jig, so this tail is the hook. If they come from the back like that, they will grab it and pull the hook into their mouth. But if they're coming from the side and they go, you'll miss the hook opportunity. So it's important to utilize the strike method that we teach last week. So when they're grabbing like that, you strike it and you actually hook the side of the tentacle in the mouth as well. So understanding their behavior is important to be effective, to target them, and to know to utilize effective techniques to try to target, to increase your hook rate. So this is to understand the behavior. So the first thing is to understand the anatomy. Squid are colorblind, so we have to create users jig that can target their vision, And the other way is the technique to improve to the hook rate as well. So next we'll cover the rod. So squid rod, if you're fishing land-based and boat and kayak, there's a different length of requirement that you need. So what do length do? Length for land-based is very important because that usually you need to cover a lot of space. So you need to cast very far. So for us, we would recommend about 8'3" to 8'6" rod to get the distance, so they can cast from bang, bang, bang to get the distance as well. Because longer rod, you can cast further. Just like surf rod, you tend to be able to cast further. So if you're shorter rod, you tend to be casting nearer. So you might be missing out on the opportunity to search for squid that is further out. So it's best to get a longer rod for land-based. For boat, you can tend to be using shorter rod, 6 foot to 7 foot rod. It's because that the confined space in the boat, and also that you do not need to cast that far to look for the squid. Because boat, you can just drive directly to the squid patch and can just pretty much just cast like 2-3 meters in front, instead of you need to search like a land-based. So for boat, you tend to use shorter rod, and as well as it's not so cumbersome, so that you do not tangle with others in the boat as well. So for land-based, go for a longer rod. But personally, we do not recommend to go above 9 foot. It's because that the rod you can cast way further, but in return you actually lose the sensitivity, because the energy from the squid touch is so, you need to travel so long through the rod to the base of your handle that you do not actually feel the touch. So for longer rod, we do not recommend to go too long, because that you lose the sensitivity. So go in between. So it's about 8 foot to 8'6" to be great. So this is our personal recommendation. So for reel usually we go from 1,000 to 2,500. That's the standard, and some people go to 3,000. Reel is important not to go too big. It's because that you need a well-balanced weight reel, so that you balance your rod and your reel, that you can do whip the egging techniques for a few hours, because you have to constantly casting out and whipping to do the egging technique. So it takes a lot of energy if you're too heavy, as well as the rod and the reel is not balanced. If the reel is too heavy, so you tend to not have the smoothness when you try to do the egging technique. So we recommend that 1,000 to 2,500 reel will be sufficient. And because you are not squid do not, it's not like fish, they will pull a lot of drag or anything, so you don't tend to need a lot of line. So for us, we'll recommend 2,500 is the best for us. Yep. So next we'll cover the reel. Reel we have covered. So line. So fishing line is important. So we have to have a balance between the strength and the sensitivity as well. So the stronger line tend to be the higher power, but you lose the sensitivity. So if you go for a 20-pound line, you might lose the sensitivity of what a 15-pound to 8-pound line will give you when the squid touch. So, but in return, a stronger pound line, that you tend to lose less jigs, so you can be able to remove from the weed when it's snagged. So you have to balance up between, you want to have a more safety net in terms of not losing more jigs, or in terms of you want to have more sensitivity where you can feel the squid, so they can incorporate other techniques like striking techniques and other things. So it's up to you to decide. And for us, we usually go for Gosen line. So Gosen is more expensive. So even a 23-pound line, but the diameter is much thinner. It's of equivalent to a 15-pound line, 15-pound line diameter. So it's still very thin. So we can still cast further. So if you're going a line, try to find the thinness if possible as well, and the higher pound as well, so that the thinner line you can cast further, and also that you can actually much stronger as well if you get higher pound with thinner line. So we usually go Gosen, but it's very expensive. So, but in return, we don't lose so much jig. So as well as that, it's more economical that way. So okay, next we have to cover the weather. So whenever you go to a fishing, you have to understand a few factors. Once you arrive at the spot, you have to understand the weather and the water condition. So because weather, you can determine what is the best squid jigs to use on the day, depending on the available light. So I'll talk more about that once we select talking about the jigs. So with the available light and the wind condition, the wind direction, it all affects like what jig size, what jig weight, as well as the color of the jig that you will select for the day. So weather is very important. So also time of the day. Time of the day so that you know the squid in terms of are they in a feeding mode, in a feeding frenzy, or are they in a shutdown mode. So for southern calamari in Australia, so we usually tend to have sunrise and sunset. That's where they are feeding frenzy time. So for in Europe or America, they have the loligo squid. That's where they come out at night from the deep. So those are usually in late night. So those are different type of feeding frenzy time. So you have to determine on the country where you are and the type of squid species that you're targeting. So for us in Australia, we usually go for sunrise and sunset. That's the best time to target squid. So for time of day, for that time, you can choose the squid jig that is best suited for those time. So you'll increase your catch rate as well. So it'll be more effective to get the tame the squid. So water condition. So once you arrive at the spot, it's important to look at the weather, the wind direction, as I mentioned previously, because the wind direction will determine how you're going to cast your jig at. So if the current is coming from left and right, then you have to use a technique where you cast, like I mentioned last week, the drifting technique. So you cast to the right. If the current is coming from the right, you cast to the right and let the jig drift to the left. And if it's coming from the left, you cast to the left and coming from right. Let it drift to the right. So if coming from the front, you have to cast it, but your line have to constantly be winding up a bit because it's you'll get more loose drag. So if it's going out the current, you're constantly dragging your jig out further, so you constantly have to let out more line so that your jig have the opportunity to get to the bottom. So understanding the current is important so that you can effectively get your jig to the target zone. So understanding the direction and incorporate the technique that you need to compensate as well for the line to get to the jig, for the jig to get to the bottom. So for water condition, so once you get there, you need to understand the depth, how deep the area you're fishing in. Let's say the time of the day as well. Is it a high tide or is it a low tide? So for skilled fishermen, you are able to judge at the time how deep the water is. So let's say you can see, okay, high tide, currently it's high tide. So usual place will be 5 meters of water. So you have to remember, if you fish 1 hour now and the next hour the tide is going out, you have to compensate for that, maybe become 4.5 meters and stuff. So the jig might take shorter time to sink to the bottom. So depth is very important. So that you can get your jig down without getting snagged, but also get your jig be able to get close to the bottom before you do any technique to jerk it up. Depth is very important. So clarity, water clarity. So is the water dirty or is it clean? So from that, same thing like the weather. You can choose, determine of that. You can choose the jig size, the jig color, no, not jig color, jig effect. What sort of effect you want to use? If the water is very murky, you would want to use jig that create a really dark silhouette or make it glow so that it has a light so that they can see through the murky water. So squid, I forgot to mention, they can see UV as well as glowing lights as well. Not only black and white, so they're able to see UV as well as glow. So they have a heightened senses that we human eyes cannot detect the UV, but they can. So water condition is crucial. So you can choose the jig size, the jig weight, so they sink, how fast you need it to sink. Because of the current, the water condition, the current, how strong and how deep it is. The deeper it is, you might need a bigger jig so that it can sink faster. And water clarity so they can determine the jig effect. So technique we mentioned last week with the more advanced technique, and also previous 2 weeks ago we mentioned the more normal technique. So technique is important so that how to be effective, because you need to understand the time of the day you're fishing. So if the squid is in a feeding frenzy, technique do not play such an important part, but it's still an important part because you try to get it down to attract them. So you have to use the technique, the right technique, and also to get to the right depth before you do all the technique to entice them. So during feeding frenzy, technique you can still have some slack on it, but for during the quiet time when they are not in a feeding frenzy, That's where the skill comes in. The technique is important during those times because you have to use this technique to entice their curiosity as well as to make them feel that it's an easy meal because they're born to, for squid, they only have 1 year of life. So they are born to feed and breed. So for them to see an easy meal coming by, they might just think, okay, easy meal, I'll just grab it and eat it. So that's why when they're quiet time, you have to entice their curiosity as well as to entice them to make them feel that the jig is an easy target and it's easy prey for them to just grab an easy meal as a snack. So during this quiet time, you need to use more subtle technique instead of whipping, egging technique and everything. So use more subtle technique like I mentioned, like more light tap and dragging and stuff. So these are more important. So it's very crucial that you need to understand those techniques. So do not use too aggressive technique, because if you use too aggressive technique, you actually will spook the squid. They'll go move away. And so know the season as well. So whenever the season is, smaller squid like Victoria now, we have a lot of squid at the moment, but they are all tiny. So if you're using very aggressive technique, they will just get spooked. So try to use a more subtle technique, then they will come and check it out so that they will actually attack it. So do not use too aggressive technique. When the season you know is smaller squid, so for the next month and the month after, we know that the squid is starting to become medium size, then we can incorporate a more aggressive technique. So understand their behavior is very important. So the time of day, are they feeding or are they not? When they're not, you have to use more subtle technique. When they are, you can use more aggressive technique because they're in the hunting mode. So actually, it will be counterproductive if you're using too subtle technique during the aggressive mode because you think, oh, this thing might be dead, I can't be bothered chasing. They rather chase for live, fresh prey. So you tend to use more aggressive technique when they're in the more feeding mode. All right, so finally, we'll teach you about squid jig. Squid jig is the most important part of squid fishing because it's like fishing. Fishing, you need the bait or a lure to attract the fish or the target species. Without it, you pretty much couldn't catch a squid. So how are we going to go about understanding how to choose the right jig, the right size, as well as the right color? Because in the industry, there's so many colors and patterns that you think, how do I choose the right one? It's very confusing. So past few weeks, we did teach one of the master class, then how to understand our color science. Once you understand our color science concept, you'll be able to go to any store and see the color, and you will know that which one will be most effective at which time. So it's important to learn this so that you increase your effectiveness to choose the right jig. So during the feeding frenzy, a lot of people say, oh, Kmart jigs or whatever jigs will work fine. And yes, all jigs will work fine in catching squid, but certain jigs will catch more squid effectively at certain time. So this is because those type of jigs will actually create this effect to target the squid tree vision, the silhouette to target the black and white vision, the UV jigs to target their squid UV vision to able to see the UV, as well as the glow, the ability to see glowing lights in the deep sea. So it's important to understand different jigs actually do play a different part in being more effective. So especially when they're in a quiet time, so they're not in the feeding frenzy, or you are on a pier with a lot of people, you're fishing next to each other, you will see that effective, how some jigs are more effective than the other. Why some people next to you are catching squid after the other, while the one next to you are struggling. Jigs do play a part. So do understand this concept. And if you do not understand, haven't seen our color concept masterclass, go back to it to have a look at it, or our website under the learn section. We have the chart there, and it'll show you that how it works. So I'll teach you a quick run through of how to choose the right color. So different color have different wavelengths. So the color of the rainbow have different color of wavelength. So for red color, it have long wavelength. So for longer wavelength, it has less energy. So it actually do not have the strong energy to penetrate deep into the water. And for blue colors, it have short wavelength, so it has more energy. It can penetrate deep down into the water and still remain blue color. As for red, because it can't penetrate deep into the water with the red color energy, they tend to lose the color of red, the shade of the color, as it dives deeper and deeper. So let's say this is a red jig. Let me get a black jig. So for a red jig, as it dives, once it passes about 4 meters or 5 meters, it starts to become gray color. And once it passes 5 meters, it starts to become black color. It's because it loses its shade after it passes 5 meters. It does not have enough energy to penetrate deep down. So as for a blue jig, on the other hand, it can go really deep and it still remain blue. Then it become lighter, become darker blue, and until to the point where it gets deep into the sea, it becomes black. So that's why our sea is black or green colors, because these two colors have a short wavelength and able to penetrate deep into the sea. So I'll just show you our color chart. So just give me a second. Just make sure you can see it. All right. So red color, as I mentioned, it has long wavelength and low energy. So it only penetrates 5 meters. Once it goes down like that, once it passes 5 meters, it slowly become gray, darker gray, and become black. And orange as well. So it actually, as you dive deeper, a jig becomes silhouette. So what does it do? So why do you want your jig become black? So if it become black, when it become black and white, what does it happen? It become a silhouette. It creates the jig to become a silhouette, a black silhouette. So that in black and white vision for the squid, they can see much better. So that's why even late at night, even if you use a red jig or a black jig, to us, we will think that's crazy. How can you see at night? We can't even see at night. How can the squid see when the black jig is in the water or the red jig is in the water? But it's different. So when these jigs get into the water, the squid can actually see much better because it's black and white. So you actually turn into a very standout black and white. In the black and white, the jig will stick out like a sore thumb. So it will very be obvious for the squid. So use colors that actually create silhouette at various depth. But then you say, oh, in that case, I can just use a red jig and a black jig, and that's it. Yes, you can use that. That's why we, in Tsuriou, black jig is a red foil jig, and a black jig is effective for day and night. So we call it the all-day jig. Yeah, you can use day and night. But if it's a pure black color like that, it might not look natural to a squid. So at times, we want to be more natural. Natural, we do not use natural color jigs, but instead we use sunset and sunrise. We use orange and yellow because why? Sunset and sunrise have yellow and orange light. So when it shines on the jig, they will actually create a more natural color as it sinks down. Let's see, let's get an orange jig. So as an orange jig sinks down, it creates a darker, up here should be very light orange because with an orange light shine on it, it looks very light orange. So as it go down, you become light gray, lighter gray, lighter gray, and become dark gray and stuff. So as it go down light gray, it looks like what? A bait fish. A bait fish is silver color. So if it's a light gray, it becomes more natural. So because when it's enhanced by the orange light, so this jig will become very light orange on top. So as it go down, it can become lighter. It slowly become darker and darker. So you have more chance to become darker before it become black. So that way it become more natural. So as you can see here, so let's say we use a blue jig. As it goes down, it becomes darker, lighter blue, darker, and become black. But in black and white, that's what it looks like. So when it comes down like that, it looks more natural. As it sinks down, it looks more natural. It's silver. So to the squid, it's seen as gray tinge instead of pure black. Because if you're using a red jig, it comes very quick from here to here. So there's no chance for it to have more natural color in between. So that's why a red jig is good for day and night. You'll work day and night when you don't have other jigs. So you use a red foil jig or a black jig because you come from here to here right away because it's relatively shallow. But if you want more natural, so to give the whole process of slowly turning into different colors, like from light to become dark, then use colors that actually match the hatch. We say match the lighting that you have on the day, so that when it sinks slowly down, you create a more natural progress of the color. So it's like to a squid, it looks like a reflective squid jig. So like a prey, the bait fish, where they have like silvery when they swim around. So it's more natural, so you attract them much better. That's why you'll make your jig more effective. But if you need only 2 jigs, I would say use a white jig or a black jig. That will be very effective for day and night. So go to our website, under the Learn section, you'll be able to see this chart. We have a YouTube video when you click play, you'll see how the jig will look like when it sinks down. So with knowing this, you'll be able to choose color that is best suited to the condition that you're fishing. So this is to target the squid silhouette vision. So I'll teach you next as well. So also to target squid behavior, you see some jig, why people say that, oh, white jig with a red head is very effective. So a lot of brands, you will see that they have a white jig with the red head. So for us, our design tend to have a head and body separation. So we have our dragon jig. So why do we have a dragon head? It's because that we create a target for squid behavior. Because squid tend to like to attack, as we mentioned earlier. They like to grab the head first. So if we create a head target, so they tend to attack the head first, so the hook rate will increase. So these jigs are more effective. This is part of the reason that we incorporated. And we incorporate the hair pattern. What does it do? Because under black and white, these patterns of different color, it looks like a bleeding bait. So you know when the flesh of the bait actually get damaged, so you actually create a more like a bleeding bait that's already injured. So that is why our jig doesn't only look good, but it actually creates a pattern to actually attract from the color. That's why we say we incorporate color science in our jig, so that you create a different tone of silhouette, black silhouette and gray, so black and gray. And when you dive down to different depth of the water, so you create a more realistic look for the squid. So because squid hunt with their eyes, not with their taste or not with their other senses, because it's that they are ambush predator. So they wait and they look, then they attack. So that is why it's important to target their vision. Use jig colors that actually will create the best look. Because if you use natural pattern or anything, it doesn't do anything to a squid. Because why? As it sink, it become pure black and stuff. So natural pattern and stuff won't do much difference. So for, let's say, for a scale like that, when it goes down, you can see the scale in black and white. So it looks more realistic instead of just a natural, let's say, a bait fish pattern jig. So that's why we do not have natural looking pattern jig in our range. It's because to us, it's better to use color to create natural, to target the squid behavior instead of a pattern that is more natural. So do not be afraid to use fancy jig like our jigs, because actually it has the color will help to entice the squid. So now you know how to utilize silhouette. We'll teach you about glow. So squid, to us, a glow jig looks like that. But to squid, underwater, this is what we see, a green light. But to squid, they'll just see a white glow. So in a dark underground water, so a bright white glow will actually attract them to come towards the light source. That's where they become curious and they will attack it, because because in the deep sea, those colossal squid, how do they hunt? They hunt through their silhouette vision to see black and white, and they hunt through attacking prey fish where they use the glow. They have the glow lights, so that's why they attracted towards that. So glow is one of the effects that you can use to attract squid. So glow jigs is very effective, not only for night. So what do glow jig do at night? Glow, how does it glow? Glow, you actually need to absorb the energy into the jig itself, to the body of the jig, the glow body jig, and then you will emit the energy out as light source over the time. So you need a light source to charge it up, and you hold the light source and you emit it. So a glow jig is very good at night to make it glow, to attract the squid. But why do people, a lot of times you see, oh, I use the white glow jig in the morning and stuff, in the afternoon and stuff, it's effective. And a lot of people tend to say, oh, black jig or white jig. White jig is important, you can use the day and night as well, like I mentioned, because glow, it works at night. In the day, how do a white glow jig works, or any glow jig works? Because from at night, yes, here it is. So at night, this is what we see of a glow jig. So in the morning, if we charge it up with a sunlight, a glow jig requires a light source to to charge it up. So if you charge it up with a sunlight, it means that you're charging up with UV rays. So UV rays is absorbed into the body of the jig, and you'll turn the jig into a UV glow. And to us, we call it a UV silhouette. You'll create a UV silhouette for the squid. So a jig that glows in the day, you'll use it to attract the squid, not because it glows in the dark. It's because that it actually creates a UV glow that the squid can see that our normal human eyes could not see. We have a UV camera that actually can detect the UV. So when we take a photo of the squid jig, we can see that it actually creates a silhouette. We call it a UV silhouette because it absorbs the UV, and it will show on the jig. So how do the UV camera works? So it's like sunscreen. Sunscreen is actually actually absorb UV. So it's like a UV paint. You actually absorb the UV, and then you actually show a glow white color. So in a camera, this is what a normal person's face look like. But if you coated it with UV paint, but this is in terms of they use sunscreen. So it's the same effect. Sunscreen will absorb the UV, and then you will reflect the light. So when they absorb the UV, the whole jig become black to the squid. So this is called UV silhouette. So with the UV camera, we can see our normal face without the UV paint, but you can see all the freckles. What is freckles? Freckles actually what our skin created to protect our skin from skin cancer and stuff. So it actually absorb the UVs and actually protect us. So actually, if you use sunscreen will actually look black in the under UV camera. So it's similar to what we use UV jigs. So if we are using a UV jig, this is a UV coated jig. So UV coated jig or UV glow jig or a normal glow jig, you actually absorb and become like a vessel. So it actually will absorb the UV and you'll create a UV silhouette. So that will create, as mentioned, to target the squid silhouette vision. So using a glow jig in the morning will work effectively as well. It's because that you create a UV silhouette, just like if you're using a red jig at night to create a silhouette. So glow you can use for day and for night as well. For day, we use it as a vessel to absorb the UV rays to create a UV silhouette. And at night, you use the glow is to create a glowing light to attract the squid to the glowing light. So it's important to understand glow effect is very effective for using both ways, day and night as well. So for silhouette, for squid jigs, actually we have outer colors and an inner color as well. So it's important to understand that as well. So for inner body of the jig, we have different type of color. We call it foil, internal body, as well as the external cloth. Internal body, we have red color foil. So this one is very good in creating a very dark silhouette. So that will work day and night. So as we mentioned earlier, so as you dive over 5 meters, you become pure black straight away. So this is good for creating a very dark silhouette. So in water that's very dirty, murky, you want to stand out silhouette in a black and white shade. This will be a very good jig. So choose a jig with a red foil. So you see a lot of our Tsuriou jigs, we have a lot of red foil. It's partly because we wanted to create a really good silhouette. And we also utilize gold foil and silver foil. So what do these two do? These two create the silhouette as well. Gold colors actually will contain red in it. So it's like a brown will contain red inside. So you'll create a really good silhouette as well. So we always use gold, and gold, especially during afternoon, when it's enhanced by the sunlight, it actually will create a much more natural, as mentioned earlier, a more natural look when you actually dive down. So you create a light gray, become darker gray, become a black. So for that, you'll create a more natural silhouette, same as the silver as well. You'll create a more natural silhouette. But these two will do another effect as well. Because gold and silver is very reflective, so it actually reflects the UV rays to the cloth material so that you absorb it. So when you absorb it, what does it do? It creates a UV silhouette, as mentioned earlier. So you create two effects, a silhouette and a UV silhouette. So in that case, it will become double more effective to target the squid vision. If they do not see the silhouette, they can see a UV silhouette. So that is why you do not be afraid to use silver foil or gold foil as well. But if you want to be safe, go for anything with a red foil. Red foil is very effective day or night. So we also, for UV as well, we also have jigs that have reflective plate inside, internally. So this is to create the same effect as the silver and the gold as well. This one will reflect the UV to the cloth material as well as the casing around the jig to absorb the UV rays so that you create a very good UV silhouette. Some companies, they do have the reflective plate where you can spin around a lot, and this also similar to those is actually to create a shimmer. So the shimmer, like if someone wearing a watch, to shine the shimmer light on you, but those effect is not really as important towards squid, but you will do help as well. Yeah. So this is one of the things that we do incorporate in our jig as well. So this is very important. So we covered silhouette and we covered glow, and UV is very important as well. UV, there is UV paint. So this our jig, we have few UV jigs that is actually UV paint jigs. So actually, UV paint jig is very crucial in daytime. Why? Because our jigs, for UV jigs, coated one, we have two kinds. One with a red foil and one with glow body. So for the glow body, we try to do our jigs with two effects. So this is the red foil with a coated UV paint. So you create, as it dives, you create a silhouette, but the UV paint will absorb the UV and actually will reflect the color of neon colors. But these two that I have right over in front of me is not the neon color. But if you look at our neon range, you can actually see that if you shine on a UV torch on it, it actually will glow bright neon. So neon colors is actually not what the squid see. So this is actually to attract us. So the neon color is to attract us, but the neon colors do play a part. Let's say for pink or orange and yellow, they still play a part based on this. So choose a squid jig color with UV paint, but you still have to try to incorporate this color science into it as well, so that when you go different depth, the different neon color will create a much better silhouette as well. So the neon color is actually the effect of the UV. So what the squid skin is not the UV color, the neon color. Those are what is reflected light through the jig. The actual color they see is actually what is absorbed from the UV light into the material. Because for UV paint, they absorb the UV paint into the paint, and then after they reflect the neon colors out. So if you have a tonic border like this, let me go and grab it. Let me go grab a UV torch as well. So with that, I'll show you how UV actually works. Now let me grab a UV torch. Just give me 2 minutes. So all right. So for UV, I'll show you. So this is soda water, and this is tonic water. Tonic water, think of it as like a UV paint or a sunscreen. So tonic water actually have a compound inside that will actually absorb the UV and will reflect the neon light to it as a visible light. Same as the the dishwashing liquid is more neon color. It's that actually will absorb the color and actually will reflect the more bright neon color. So for soda water, if you shine UV light on it, it's not dark enough, so you can't really see well. So actually, if you shine on it, it's normal. It's just normal water. But for tonic water, if you shine on it, it actually will glow. I put next to each other. So you see, the color is actually different. So if you're at home, try to get a UV light to shine on the tonic water. You'll actually see. Soda water will look naturally clear, and the UV and the tonic water will actually have a more bright color. So tonic water acts like a UV paint. So go home, if you're at home, have tonic water, try to shine on it, and you'll see that you actually glow. And for soda water, it does not glow. You just become normal, transparent. But if you do that, you can actually see there's a different color to the tonic water. So it's important to understand that UV jigs do help, especially in daytime. So do not be afraid to buy UV jigs, because UV jigs will actually be very effective during the day. So it's important for you to understand that you need to target the Squid 3 vision, the silhouette, how they can see black and white, and the UV vision, where they can see the UV silhouette. And for glow, they can see the bright lights as well. So if you incorporate the knowledge of our color science, you'll be able to go to shops to choose jigs that actually have the effect that you want to target the squid, and also choose the effective color. Because a lot of jig, you see everyone have their own favorite. Why? Because they have their own favorite. A lot of companies, they create a big range for you so that you can choose, you can try, spend a lot of money to try different jigs, so that you can find the one that actually you finally think that that's the best jig, the most effective jig for you. Because a lot of times it's based on luck, or a lot of times based on you actually manage to get the one that is very effective. So to understand this concept, you'll be able to go out there to choose jigs that you will see that will work much better compared to the other. Because a lot of times, company create range is because that is for profit. Because if you don't have a big range, you can't make profit. So for us, we try to create a range, but all are effective colors, and effective is more effective. Is why? Because we incorporate multiple effects into the jig. So you go out there, when you go shop, try to find a jig that understand it, what it will do in different conditions, and the colors, how it will react at different time of the day, and also when you dive, how deep it is, so know where you're fishing. Those will actually help increase the potential and effectiveness of your squid fishing. Because at times, squid jig is very important. When it's quiet, it's between not catching and you are the one catching it. So other people on the pier are struggling. If you use the right effect jig, and it more stand out and more visible to the squid, and you use technique that go with it, that is more natural, end up you are the one catching and other people is not catching. So squid jig is very important. Just like fishing, you use a bait. When you tie your bait on, you have to know how to tie it nicely. The bait presentation is equivalent to squid fishing technique. So you need to make it more subtle or more aggressive. So these are equivalent to bait presentation in fishing. So it's important to effective means that you have to understand the whole concept of all different aspects of fishing, of squid fishing, from the rod, reel, line, weather, water condition, as well as the jig, not only the jig color, the jig effect, and now we have to cover the sink rate as well. So jig have 3 sizes. The normal sizes, the most basic one is 2.5, 3 and 3.5, and we have slow sinking as well. So when you go to a place and you see the water condition is a bit rough, then you tend to have to use common sense as well. So pretty much when the rough sea, your jig, small jig, you couldn't dive to the bottom where the target zone is, then you have to increase the size of the jig. When the size increase, what happened? The weight increase. So when the weight increase, you'll dive much faster. So size does not mean you're catching big or small squid. It just means that you can sink faster or slower. So personally, for us, we tend to, in Victoria, we can tend to go away with size 2.5 jigs. That's what we use most of the time. because smaller jigs tend to be able to catch small squid as well as big squid. So in return, it's more effective to catch volume of squid, and it gives you more opportunity to catch squid from small to big, and you can upsize and stuff. So if you're a small one, you can just release it straight away, and you have more opportunity to have the fun of catching as well. So we try to tend to go the smallest jig allowed on the condition of the day. So if you see the water condition is a bit rough, so tend to go for 3, and if it needs to go higher, 3.5. Because big jig, we tend not to use big jig, is because that big jig do not catch small squid. They tend to spook the small squid, because just imagine, if you're a small squid like that, if you see a jig this big, you tend to can check it out, but you tend to back off because they tend to get spooked. It's something bigger than you. But if they are a small jig, for a big squid like that, they see a small squid jig like that, they see it's an easy snack. They just grab it and just eat it. So, but on the other hand, a small squid will get intimidated by a big jig. So we try to use the smallest jig allowed on the day based on the water condition and the wind condition as well. So if the wind is too strong, you tend to need to be a more heavy jig so they can cast further out. So that is why jig is important. The size is important. You can go to our website to have a look as well under the learn section based on the size. So different size have different purpose. So it tend to be more for the sink rate, to how to get to the bottom of the squid, to the bottom of the seabed, the squid hang around. So size is very important. Sink rate is very important as well. Sink rate is where the back of the packaging, they tend to have how fast it sinks per meter. So you need to know that, let's say if you go to a 4 meter, you're fishing today, and it's like a mid-tide, now it's about 4 meters. So you need to know, let's say at the box it says 3 meters, 1 meter 3 seconds. So it means that every 3 seconds you dive 1 meter. So if the location is, let's say, is 4 meters, so you 4 times 3 seconds is 12 seconds. So it takes about 12 seconds to get to the bottom, but you have to adjust it. So you make it about 11 seconds so that it does not snag. If you go 12 seconds, you go all the way to the bottom, you will snag. So you adjust it to 11 seconds to get close to the bottom before you do a technique to whip it up. So understanding the sink rate and the depth of the water is important so that you can get your jig down close to the seabed. A lot of people tend not to catch is because their jig did not have the opportunity to get close to the seabed where the squid is, and before they do the hop. Because let's say if you come to the squid are here at the bottom, and you come to the midway and you already start hopping, the squid is like, oh, how can I attack it? I just saw something move, but by the time I come here, it's already gone. The jig is already gone further. It's getting close, because you're constantly winding in, hopping and winding in, the squid is already do not have the opportunity to attack. So squid attack when it's in the sink. So when it's coming down like that, that's when they come to attack, because that's when the prey is less aggressive. So when you're hopping, it's so aggressive, they do not have the opportunity to attack. They only have the opportunity to come towards it, check it out. So when it's on the sink, that's when they actually attack. So give your jig time to sink, to get close to the bottom of the seabed, and also the time for the squid to attack when it's actually sinking. So it's important to understand the sink rate of your jig, but do remember that what we have in our packaging is the sink rate behind our packaging is actually done in a controlled environment where there's no wind, there's no current. So you actually have to compensate the timing and understand the jig sink rate when you get to the location and see the current as well. If the current is too strong, then you have to add another few seconds to it because it will take longer for the jig to actually sink. So you have to understand what we recommend on the packaging and stuff. This is from a range we recommend, but this is in a controlled environment without the wind, without the current. This is where we test our jigs and stuff. But when you go to the open environment, the factors all changes day by day. So you have to understand that and actually make adjustment on the day. That is why a skilled fisherman, to be able to fish effectively, is that you're able to go to a place, analyze the environment first, then choose the jig that you think will be most effective on the day, and this will increase your catch rate and the visibility to the squid. When the jig is more visible to the squid and get to the right target zone, and what happens? You have more chances to catch it. If the squid can't see your jig, you're using a jig that is not very visible to them, the effect is not very good, and what happens? You tend to not catch as often as people that's using jig that have the effect that actually attract them much better. So it's crucial to incorporate all the information to learn all this, so that whenever you go to fishing, you have to be all prepared of that. Also for line, I forgot to mention, for line, in the last lesson, we always teach to use braid line instead of monofilament for the main line, because braid line do not have a stretch. So when the squid was pulling your jig, you can feel on the line that actually, or your tip, or like we teach last week, have a hand on your finger like that. So you can actually feel the vibration from the tip all the way down to your hand. So when you feel that, you can strike the squid. So when they're coming on the side of the jig, so you can strike. So that is why I say use a braid line, because it does not have stretch. When it does not have stretch, when you pull, you straight away have to pass on the energy to the rod. So if you use monofilament, that's more stretchy. So when they're actually pulling the line, because it's so stretchy, let's say it's so stretchy like that, you don't really feel the squid touching. So you tend to, a lot of time you lose the squid, they come and touch it and they actually rip their own tentacle off, or they already got loose, they already hit off, and you still haven't actually felt the squid yet. So it's important to use braid line so that you can actually feel the squid much more effectively compared to monofilament. It's not that you can't use monofilament, it's just that it's not as effective as braid line, because since now the technology has improved that we have braid line, so it's best to utilize the technology of the day that we have to improve your catch rate to be more effective. So color is important, the size of the squid jig is important, the effect of the squid jig is important, understanding the internal body of the squid jig, the foil is important, and also understanding the cloth color is important as well. Also the pattern as well is important. If you do try to utilize the pattern to attract the squid, to make it even more visible. So because a lot of companies, they just have like lines, pattern and stuff, it's very attractive to humans because of the patterns and stuff. But in reality, for squid, they'll just see a few darker lines and stuff. So it's go to jigs and look go to the shops and look, then learn our color science, then you can see, oh, will this jig work more effectively, the other jig work more effectively, why certain people recommend this color and stuff. Because a lot of people recommend their favorite jigs, but they do not have the concept or idea why they recommend this jig and why is it effective for them. Because a lot of people say, oh, I use yellow jig, it's very effective during the day and stuff. Yes, yellow jig is very effective during the day because the sunlight contains yellow light. When it shines on the jig, the yellow jig, it becomes a brighter light yellow. So when it sinks down, it takes longer for them to create a light gray, light darker gray, and become a black, become black at the end to a silhouette. So during the process of becoming a pure black, it becomes more natural color. So it looks more like a reflective bait fish that is silvery when they're swimming around in the water. Where you use the torch to shine at night, you see the fish out of sight. It's actually silver color and reflective. That is the reason of it. So that's why certain colors will work more effectively at certain times as well, certain effect. So that is why have a range of jigs, and it's very important to understand the squid behavior as well, because certain days color you might think will match the sunlight and all these things will work very well, but in reality the squid do not like the color on the day. So you also have to have a range of squid jig to try the color that will actually attract them, because we have fished before, use all the color of the day, did not work. Then we use a gold foil and a black cloth jig in a bright sunny afternoon, and we back out within an hour. So we were using other jigs with red foil, did not work. Patterns, glow jigs did not work. Then we used gold foil, and that was the key to our bagging out. It's because the sunlight, they wanted the UV silhouette effect and a silhouette effect on the day, and the squid just bang and just went off. So have a range of effect jigs, a different type of effect for glow, silhouette, as well as UV. So that way, squid have different, it's like a human as well, they have different tastes in a different day, and different groups have different tastes. So you might think that, oh, today is a sunset, okay, we use an orange jig or pink jig, and it will work. No, it's not like that. So the squid might on the day do not want that, they want a glow jig, then you have to change to a glow one that will actually attract them. So that is why try to utilize different type of jigs and colors as well, and try to use smallest jig is possible if you want to tend to catch you want to catch volume. If you want to catch only big squid, then use only big jigs, because that one will actually eliminate all the small squid and the medium squid. They tend to be the bigger squid, or the mid-sized squid will attack it. So it's up to your preference of, like I say, effective is very subjective. So it's depending on how you want to be effective catching a big squid, spending hours just to catch one big squid. Because because big squid tend to not school, they tend to be more aggressive, so they are more territorial because they are breeding in the breeding age, so they tend to be more alone. So that's why you see a lot of places like Flinders in Victoria. That's where all the big squid is, but they tend to be, so you have to spend hours just to catch one or two big squid. But if you go to other areas where it's small and medium squid, you tend to catch in the most bigger volume because of the school. So understand what you try to target as well, and the area as well. So if you go to an area with big squid, if you tend to use a big jig, it's fine. So don't have to really use small jig. So it's up to you. So okay, I think that's for me for today. Let's see what question we have. Does barometer affect the squid? For us, we haven't researched much into that, because for squid, to us, we think that is not that affected. Because for fishing like snapper, we do follow the barometer, like 1,000 and above, then we go for fish and stuff. But for squid, we don't tend to really take notice of that. We tend to more notice that when it's full moon. That's a scientific reason why during full moon that you actually catch less squid and less fish. So that one we'll cover in one of the master class later on. And for squid, for us, we more look towards the water condition. So sometimes when it's too calm, actually there's no movement in the water. We sometimes find it's much more harder to get squid, because they actually prefer a little bit of movement in the water rather than a very pure calm condition. So squid are temperamental as well. So at times we find that if the water is too warm and it's close to the shore, they tend to go deeper, where the water column is more consistent, the temperature. And same as well in winter, when it's too cold, they tend to go deeper, where out of casting distance. That's why some certain days you see that you will struggle much harder at a spot where you usually catch a lot of squid, and you find that on the day there's no squid at all. So do look at the condition of the day, because sometimes the water is too warm, they tend to go deeper. And so back then we actually do some other stuff to try to get our jig. When we go there, because it's already too late, we did not bring longer rod or anything to try to cast further. So at times we do actually use sinker to actually cast further out. So the downside is that where you fish on all weeds, you tend to get a lot more snag on the sinker. So but you can get cast out of the distance where normal rod without a sinker can cast. So if you can cast further during winter, you can tend to be able to search the squid in the deeper waters, but you can still able to catch them during winter. For one of my friends, like he loves to use paternoster rig to catch during winter, because he can cast further out. But personally, I do not like to use that method, because that I get frustrated, because you get snagged so often, you constantly have to keep changing and retying the rig and stuff. So, but you increase your catch rate because you can cast further out where the squid is out of the normal casting distance, because they are in the deeper waters where the water is more stable. So what do you do when the squid is only on one tentacle? Actually, like I say, a lot of times in the afternoon, you see that people tend to catch squid by one tentacle or two tentacles. Some people said, oh, you do not know how to catch a squid, you don't know how to fish, or you're just lucky that you hook on a tentacle by chance. But actually it's not. So actually, if you're skillful enough, you actually can tempt their curiosity, behavior, so that, or to make them feel that it's really easily snag. That is why you tend to get in the afternoon, where they're more timid, when they're more cautious, that they're not aggressive when they grab really fast and chew it in. So they tend to come and touch it and stuff. So that's why they tend to get hooked on the tentacle. They're curious, they kind of see if this is a food, they slow touch it, and they got hooked on it. So you tend to get more tentacle hook. It's not that because you're not skillful. So if you're skillful enough, actually you try to hook them when they're very timid. So you actually entice them to use their tentacle to get hooked. So when you get hooked on a tentacle, just make sure your drag, like for us, if there's two kinds of fishing with your drag or the reel. One is very tight drag. If you're using a more mid-end to low-end rod that's not so sensitive, we tend to have a more tight drag where it's very tight. So when the squid touch, you actually can feel your rod tip move, then you know that the squid is on. So for me, we use the high-end rod, so we tend to have a very loose drag. So our drag is like that. So when we use tentacle, when they pull, the squid pull, it actually compensate. It do not rip off the tentacle. So when they pull, the drag will still move. So that's why you see when I winding in my video, when I catch the squid, you can hear my drag is actually pretty loose. It takes me more time to wind it in, but when they dart backwards, so when they dart backwards with their tentacle, it does not break it off because it compensates with the line. So, but if you're fishing with tighter drag, then with the tentacle, they pull, they actually will rip off their tentacle. So that's why sometimes you see why when we reel in, we only have one tentacle on the jig. So try to compensate for that. If you're in the afternoon, try to loosen your drag so that you actually compensate for the squid when they dart backwards, but not too loose enough that you can't wind them in. But it's loose enough for them when they dart backwards, you'll still be able to let go out some line. Any more questions? So afternoon is a lot of times you tend to get tentacle, so just be prepared for it because that's when they are more timid. So, and especially they just come and check it out and stuff. So afternoon you tend to hook tentacle, and because small and medium squid, they tend to be more cautious. That's why you hook more small and medium squid with tentacle. But with larger squid, they tend to be more aggressive because they're in the breeding age already and they're close to their death because they're in the 1 year lifespan. So they tend to be more aggressive because when they have the eggs and everything, and they're protective of their spawning area and stuff, so they are more territorial, so they're more aggressive, so they tend to just whack the jig. So whenever you hook a big squid, you tend to not lose it because why? Because they're so aggressive, they grab it so tight, and so that you don't lose it. So catching a big squid is much easier than compared to catching a small and medium squid. That's why it's more skillful if you can catch small and medium squid consistently instead of catching a big squid. Because big squid, as long as they see it, they're aggressive, they come, they whack your jig, and they're more easy to be hooked. So it's nothing great to be catching big squid. It's actually more great if you can catch small and medium squid. What areas have high chances of squid? Are there specific key environment features to look for? Yes, I was showing someone on the last masterclass. Open your Google, let's say if you're going to a pier, open up your Google Maps in a 3D view. You look at the pier, actually if you can see brown patches along the sea. So you actually, if you see that, that's actually the weed beds or the broken ground. So when the weed beds and broken ground, you will show like that. Broken ground is where the rocks and all these things are broken at the bottom. So these are the two environments that squid love to hide to be prepared to be ambushed. The ambush are their prey. So when you open your Google Maps, when you go to a new pier, just open your Google Maps, open it in 3D view, look for the dark green patches. You will see around the, I don't have my other phone with me at the moment, or else I can show you. So just look through the 3D view, and you'll see that actually there's patches in the area. Then you'll know that you want to cast towards that area. So once you cast to the area, try to wind it in. So even if you pass the area, it's fine because they'll fall out from the bush, for the weed, and they'll come chase after it. So look for, if you're a boat, or if you're in a kayak, or if you're in a land base, when you go to a new spot, just open up your Google Map in 3D view and look for the dark patches. That's where all the weed bed is. That's where all the squid are. So those are how you look for new fishing ground for squid, because they tend to hide in the weed beds as well as the broken ground. Any more questions? But just remember that our last master class, we teach about line management. So remember to give it time for your squid jig to sink, as well as the line, enough line for it to sink down as well. Because sometimes you close your bail too soon, the line is too short. They're actually, because you have to go to the angle, and actually you just float in the middle. So you do not have enough line to get to the bottom. Make sure you have enough line to get to the bottom as well. Don't wind up the slack too soon as well. For us, when the squid doesn't express curiosity and ignores my squid, how can make squid curious. So let's say a lot of times you see at a pier, when there's light shining on, you see a lot of school of tiny squid there. No matter what you do, you cast your jig there and all these things, they do not attack. So those squid tend not to be in the feeding mood or not curious at all, because they are bold enough to be in the light area to show you they are there. So they are not in the hunting mood. So it's very hard for you to tempt them. So even if you can try with a smaller jig. Some people go down to the size of 1.5 or 1.8 or size 2 instead of 2.5, because this smaller jig to make them even smaller than them, to give them the opportunity to come and check it out. But a lot of times this squid, they'll just come and check it out and they'll back off. They'll come and check it out and back off. But you can try to cast outside of the light source, because outside the light source is where other squid is waiting. So that's why for us, at times we use the green light to shine to bring in the life cycle. So we bring in the small plankton and stuff, and then you bring in the small bait fish, then you bring in squid. At times you just bring in the big fish straight away. So if the squid do come, if you see the squid in the light source, they tend to not attack. They tend to be those that is around the light source, when it's the dark area, that's where they attack. So cast out a bit, wind it in, so when it's close to the light area, that's where they attack. So you try to target those that are actually hiding outside of the light source. Those within the light source, that's why don't bother trying, waste of time. If you see them, a school there that is keep trying casting and jig, they come and back off, and they just or not interested, don't bother wasting your time with it. Because rather than wasting time, try to cast further out and catch those around the area. Yeah. It's like fish as well, because we can fish mackerel with light as well. Sometimes you see the whole school of mackerel there, but they just keep swimming up and down. They just ignore your bait, and we cast further out. We target those that is outside the light source. So we actually end up do catch instead of those in the light source. Because those in the light source, they're bold enough to show you that, oh, I'm here, but I'm not interested in whatever you show me, because I'm in a danger zone, because everyone can see me. But those that are actually hunting, they're actually hiding on the light area. Yeah. So any more questions? Try to learn to use slower sync jig as well, if you tend to, when it's more quiet time. That's why in Australia we tend not to use a lot of slow jigs, but for our team we use a lot of slow jigs, because in Japan we use a lot of slow jigs. So in Australia, all our range we do have a slow jigs, but actually we have seen that customer has started to adopt it, so that more customer has been buying our slow jigs, because they see that slow jigs will actually become more effective, especially during when it's quiet or early season, like now in Victoria, where the squid are a lot in small in size. So for slower sync jig, it's very subtle when it goes down. So smaller squid, they are more not put off with it. They'll come and check it out and attack it. That's why we have a lot of slow jigs. So our team tend to use a lot of slow jigs. Colors and features of jigs. So for flash bulb, you mean the flash boost like in the Shimano and stuff? So for those, actually, to us, it's not because it spin around and reflect and stuff, because the reflecting like a watch and stuff actually do not catch the squid attention as much. It's because you think you're in the deep sea and there's a little bit of flash, you won't see as obvious. But they actually, to keep constantly spinning, is what they do, is the sunlight that actually hit on the plate that rotates, they're actually constantly charging up the material and the glow body of the jig to become a UV silhouette. So let me find mine. Yeah. So this is our version of the reflective. So as the sunlight hit, you will constantly charge up the external casing of the body, as well as the cloth material, to turn it into a UV silhouette like that, charge it with a UV. So you absorb the UV into the material as well as the body, so that the squid can see it more obvious, to become UV silhouette. So if you want to have that internal effect of the jig to create a UV silhouette, that's one effect. Then you can think of the cloth. So if you're fishing If you want a safe cloth, then you can go opt for a red cloth or a black cloth, then that will be used for day and night. But if you want to be more effective on create a more natural silhouette, then you can think, if you're fishing in the afternoon, you can opt for yellow color. And if the water is clear, you can opt for green or blue cloth, because green and blue, they can dive deeper before they turn black. So when they, during the process of diving, they become more natural, a progression of light gray, medium gray, darker gray to black. So you can choose color based on the time as well. So if the water is murky, you can opt for yellow color, orange color during the afternoon. Why? Because that you will create a silhouette much faster, or a red cloth that will create a silhouette very fast in a very shallow water. So if orange and yellow, you tend to have a more chance to become more natural look. That's why it's up to you what effect you want to use and what color of jigs you want to use during the time, depending on the condition of the water and also the depth as well. So if there's very shallow water, if you're using a blue color, even if you dive down all the way to the bottom, it will still be a blue jig. So it won't create as much of a progression of a different silhouette to the jig, to the squid. So it'll be a light gray all the way down. So if it's a shallow water, you can use jigs that tend to create a darker silhouette, like red, orange, yellow, which is much shallow. You become a dark silhouette. So that's much better that way. So try to understand the effect of the day, what you want to use. Let's say if you want to use a reflective jig, then that means that you're targeting the squid UV vision. So if you're using glow jig, you're targeting at night, you'll be targeting the squid glow vision to see light. But if you're using the glow jig in the day, you're targeting the squid UV vision to see a UV silhouette. We call it a UV silhouette. That we'll teach later on. We previously done a master class of it to show our camera how it looks like actually under the sun. So, but it was a bit hard to see, so we actually deleted the video. We'll redo it in a proper YouTube video where we show when the sunlight hit the jig, what the jig looks like to a squid in a UV silhouette. So understand the squid effect, the jig effect. So to understand what type of vision you want to target, the squid have 3 vision: to see black and white, to see the UV lights, or a glow light. From there you can pick a jig based on how many effect you want of the jig to be effective. Like, so let's say for our inferno squid jig is black with a head as well, and we have a back pattern. This is to mimic is black and orange. So the black part will create a very black silhouette. The orange part will create a light gray. So it will create, looks like a bleeding bait fish to the squid as well. Just like our pink jig as well, our Sakura dragon. So we have a head, so this is a target for them. Then we have pattern, and we have different shade of colors. That's when we go down, so they create different shade. So it looks more like a real fish, because a fish do not just look pure black. So they have different shade of gray and different silvery. That's why you need different patterns to create a different, more natural color. So for a black jig or red foil jig, so this is a black jig, this is a red jig. And internal body, both of them, is with red foil. So red foil, this is the internal body, and the external we have a more transparent cloth, and this is a UV painted black jig. So these 2 jig, when it's under the water at night, is very effective. So do not be afraid to use a black jig or a red jig at night, because in black and white vision, so when it's black and white, it stands out like that. So the background of the sea will become white, and the squid will see your jig stand out very, very like a sore thumb. That's why you do not be afraid to use that at night or in the day, because these 2 colors will create the best silhouette, but it will not create a natural progression of a more natural look. So when the squid is more timid, you want a more natural presentation of the jig. That's why to attract them. So normally we would say a black jig will work day and night. So you can use it in a dark day, in a murky water, or during the daytime. If you want a one jig that to rule them all, that you do not want to buy any other jig, buy a black jig with a red foil. You'll work day and night. Just that if you're competing with others, if you're just fishing alone or with your friends, then a black jig will work. But if you're fishing with a lot of people, other people around, then you want to understand the effect of the jig as well as to utilize different type of colors as well. So that is important. All right, so for the second part of the question, the flash bulb work in night. So for flash bulb, for us is the reflective. So for that, if you want to use the reflective in the night, it will not work. So if you want to reflect UV and stuff and at night, it will not work. So that effect is out of the question. But the jig, you have to see the casing of the jig, is it glow in the dark? If it's glow in the dark, then it will glow. So that is where the jig becomes effective, because it glows to attract the squid. The glow is that is attracting the squid, not the reflective part. The reflective part is only good for the daytime. So if the body do not glow, then you have to rely on the external cloth of the jig. So let's say this one have this reflective inside, and this jig does not glow. So I rely on the black color of the jig, the material of the jig. So the black color will create a silhouette, but because the internal is not glow or anything, so it will just become a black jig when it sinks down to the bottom. So that's when I use the black color to attract the squid silhouette vision, but not the UV vision. Because why? There's no UV rays from at night to charge up the material with a UV rays. So that will just become a one effect squid jig. You're only targeting the silhouette. You're not using the reflective to charge up the jig with a UV silhouette. So that's why those reflective, we don't use it at night personally, unless they have a glow body or their material is actually in a darker color. Any more questions? Try to utilize at least two effects to target the squid vision from the jig. So try to use a glow body as well as a silhouette, or a UV silhouette with a silhouette as well. So that way you can target either of the squid vision, their UV vision or their silhouette vision. And also, or you can use a glow body and incorporate patterns to it and the color of the jig to create the more realistic look for the jig. So this is some of our jigs. So you can go to our website to check it out. So our jigs, we call it where artistic design meet performance, because we try to use art. All these jigs are hand designed, and to increase the performance, because we incorporate technology as well as to incorporate the color science as well as the pattern that we have proven that it works as well. So it doesn't only look good, but it works. If you have not bought our jig before and you want to try some, feel free to use the code TRY10 and you get 10% off our website. Yeah. Any more questions? So effective is very important for us to incorporate all, not just the squid jig itself, but like I mentioned, to understand the environment once you get there. First thing first, get there, try to understand the time of the day you're fishing. So daytime, nighttime, so what the behavior of the squid will be. And then after that, to understand the depth. Is it a high tide, low tide? Because this is the crucial part. Because if you do not be able to get your jig down close enough to the seabed, then it's very hard to attract the squid. You might be lucky that a school of squid was just swimming in the mid-water and seeing your jig and they come attack it. But for us, we want to teach you how to fish with skill and technology as well as knowledge. Because you fish, you know what you're doing. We don't want you to be cast and pray, because a lot of people just cast or seeing people doing the massive whip and stuff. They're just doing a lot of whip and stuff, but they do not have the knowledge what they're actually doing. So actually you cast it out, let your jig to have time to sink it down before you do any action. It's hopping action, darting action, all those action we teach in the previous master class, so you can watch the replay. So that is why that you have to understand, not just follow what people do, because sometimes you see why they're doing that but they're catching, why I'm doing it, I'm not catching, because they know what they're doing, because they understand that jig, how far they're sinking, the technique they're using on the day, and the color of the jigs, and also the water current and the water wind direction and stuff, where they're casting is actually a strategic. So if you want to be competitive, you have to be strategic. Everything you do, you have to be mindful, and actually, for us, we actually count how many seconds that our jig is actually going down. We don't just cast and just wait. We actually, in my mind, we're counting 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 or 12 seconds. Okay, do the hop and stuff. So we actually, it's very tiring. So it's not cast and pray. So it's not very, if you want to be competitive, you actually be very focused. So it's actually a focused fishing to be very effective. You're welcome, Darina, and thanks for coming. Any more questions? So as I mentioned earlier, we have a yin yang series. All our yin yang series is black and white. So these are our yin yang series. So if you're new to squid fishing, go for these two colors, black and white. White will be a glow body, and black will be a red foil, the internal body. So the glow you can use in day and night, same as the black. So because the glow will at night will target the squid glow vision. So in the morning you target the squid UV vision. And now this white jig will have an additional coated UV paint, and you actually be fluoro color. Actually we have other colors. So you'll be charged up with UV. In the morning you will actually target the squid UV vision. So it works day and night. And for the other one, same thing. You create the silhouette in the day, and in the morning as well, you'll become a dark silhouette as well. So you actually work as well. So these two colors is the all day colors. If you want 2 jigs in your arsenal, get these two, because you'll cover the 3 effects of the squid, and it will work. And once you're more advanced, then you can start to utilize, you'll see that different color will actually work more effectively at different time, and different squid jig as well. So that is why for basic, get a black jig with a red foil and a white jig with a glow body. So this will cover the 3 effect for you for day and night as well. Then after that, once you're more advanced, then you can explore more into the more advanced colors and patterns as well. Any more questions? So next week, or the next few days, I'll be teaching you on how to fish without a squid jig. So we teach you the spike, the method on how to set up the spike hook. So that one's more relaxed way of fishing. Some people prefer to use a float, and some people call it jack. So you put your baited pilchard on it, and you wrap it up, and you cast it out. And we'll teach you the right way, because there's no right or wrong way to rig it up. But a lot of people will say that, oh, certain way is more correct way, and the other way is more correct way. So we'll go through it, how to do it, and we'll teach you paternoster rig as well, so that you can have a more versatile way. If you do not want to use the more traditional Japanese egi style, then you can use those methods to be more relaxed. And those are more cast and prey method, where you cast it out and you just wait, hope that squid will attack it. So we will teach you that method as well. And we also will talk about the myth as well. Some people say, oh, they argue that they have to be certain way to tie the fish, the head up or the head is bottom. So we'll go through that and to advise you on that method as well. So we give you an option to think of, and also to try it out as well, the other method. If you have any other topics that you want me to cover much earlier, you can write in the comment. Then we actually will fast track those masterclass much earlier. And we're currently just doing live, and we'll be starting to film our proper masterclass in YouTube in the coming weeks and months. We're in the preparation already, and we'll be filming like different adventures at different pier and our fishing adventures to teach you the whole technique, as well as showing the actual, we are in action fishing as well. So we've been busy in the back end, and so we'll be working on that towards the coming weeks and months. Yeah. Also, if you have not joined our community page, feel free to look it up, Tsuriou Australia Squid Fishing Community, the page. You can join it up, and if you post your recipes or your catch or anything, the weekly, so we have a weekly draw of, have the opportunity, anyone that participate, you have a chance to win squid jigs for weekly, as well as like monthly prizes as well. So if you haven't joined, do look up our community page and join, and feel free to share knowledge, or as well as ask questions that you need, and we will actually reply at the community page as well. So red foil body is very good. So if you're hunting around, try to look for red foil jig, because the internal foil is very crucial because the red color, as I mentioned earlier, the red is the first color to lose its shade. So you have not much energy, so because it's long wavelength, so relatively shallow, it becomes pure black. Get jig that is always tend to have a red foil, so we tend to utilize jigs that tend to be red foil because you will create the best silhouette, and also you because it's reflective foil, you actually will reflect the UV as well. Not only that you create silhouette, you have the opportunity to create the UV silhouette as well. So go to our website, the Learn section, you will look through the chart, and you actually will show the video. We actually show how different jig will look like as it sinks down to different depth of the water. So our website is Tsuriou, TSURIOU.com. So you can go there and have a check it out under the Learn section. So we have some of our write-up masterclass there as well. And also do check out our previous masterclass through our Facebook page. Facebook new rule is that every 30 days they will delete all the old live stream videos. So this video will only last for 30 days after we post it. So if you want to look back at our previous masterclass, we have done quite a few. Do have a watch back just in case you missed out on the information. So we have covered the sync rate as well as the how to set up the rod, the technique. We have an advanced technique as well as the most common technique. So also the color science of our topic and how to choose different color jigs, and also the sync rate as well. So these are some of the topics we have covered, so you can go back and have a look. If you have any questions, let me know. Okay, what does UV torch do? A lot of UV torch in the market is not the pure UV spectrum. So the pure UV spectrum is 365 nm. So the normal one is like you see is much brighter. So if the actual UV for human eyes is not very, you can't really see it well because we do not see UV very well because of our eyes. But for a lot of shops, they tend to sell those that is not pure UV. So it's included white light in it. So you tend to see the UV that is more brighter. But for our one, it's the pure UV. You don't really see it well actually. But for Squid, you see it well. So what do we do with a UV light? Okay, this is a glow jig. Now at night, this jig is targeting the Squid. What does it target? Their glow vision, the light glow vision. So in the night, we want to add an extra effect to the jig. What do we do? Instead of what do the glow do? The glow requires a light source to charge it up. If you use a normal torch to charge it up, what does it do? If it's just with a normal light source in it, and it just glow a normal energy to glow it up. But if you use a UV light to charge it up, what happens? It's like act as a vessel to absorb the UV rays of the torch, the UV light into it, and it will glow UV. And what does it do? When you glow UV, it not only target the glow vision of the Squid, but it also create a UV silhouette to target the Squid silhouette as well. The ability to see UV as well. So this jig end up become two effects instead of one effect. So if it's just a glow jig at night, you just go in, you just glow, and you attract the Squid to the glow light. But if you use that plus a UV torch on it, it becomes double effect. You create a UV glow as well, a UV silhouette as well as a glow jig. So when it goes down, if the Squid don't see the glow, they actually see become like a black jig to them because it creates a UV silhouette to it. So even in the day, you shine, like I say, if the day is cloudy, not enough sun, you can use the UV torch to shine it up, to charge it up, chuck it in, and you could actually, what happened, like I say, a glow jig in the morning will create a UV silhouette that will attract the Squid. So if there's not enough sunlight to charge the UV up, then you can use a UV torch. So that's what the purpose of a UV torch is, to create an effect for the Squid to see the UV of the jig. And also for UV torch, if it's a normal one with the more white light, you actually charge the glow jig to create a more glow on the jig because the glow need energy to charge up to glow. So if you use a normal one, it'll just be a normal glow jig. But if you use a pure UV light, you absorb the UV into the material and the body of the glow body, you create a UV silhouette as well. So it's depending on the torch as well that you're using. That's why we say that try to get a torch that is 365 nanometer. That's where the true UV is. Any more questions? Because the lights have different spectrums, so the 365 spectrum is the true UV spectrum, so that's why we use the true UV spectrum. So our UV glow torch is not very bright compared to others, but it's actually this UV that we need to charge up the jig to make it UV silhouette. If you're able to afford, try to get a line that is much more higher in pound, while the diameter is still very thin. So certain brands like Gosen, they do 16-ply fishing line. They tend to be very expensive, but in the long run, you actually do not lose so much jig, and as well as you do not lose the sensitivity of it because the line is so thin. You offer 16-ply, so you can still cast very far, as well as you can still feel the squid touch. Because you do not want to go too low line as well, too low poundage as well, because too low poundage, when you hook on the weed, that's where we tend to fish. You tend to lose jig as well, especially if you're new. But if you're more experienced and you're constantly focused, then you can tend to go up to 8 pound, 12 pound and stuff, and to 15 pound. But if you're new and stuff, you tend not to concentrate as much. You just cast it out and you can't judge the depth. Then I tend to advise to spend more on a better line that is thinner, stronger pound, but in return actually you do not lose so many jigs, and you will become more economical. So once you're more experienced, you can go down your pound, then when you fish focus, then you don't lose the jig. Yeah. We give it a couple of minutes. If there's no more question, I think that's it for today's masterclass. So if you haven't followed our Instagram, feel free to follow our Instagram as well. So it's #Tsuriou. And if you haven't tried our jigs before and you would like to try some, feel free to use the code TRY10 and you get 10% off on our website. And now we have a promotion as well. If you spend 150, you get a limited additional year of the snake squid jig that's not for sale. And if you spend 200, you get an additional land done squid jig that is a limited edition as well. All right, we just give it a minute. Then if nothing else, I think that's it. If you have any more questions, feel free to leave it in the comment, and when I see it, I'll reply it. All right. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'm Chen from Tsuriou. I'll see you next masterclass. Thank you so much.